Hey friend, welcome. There's a moment that comes, quiet at first, but powerful. It's when the world starts to echo back what your spirit has known for years. You weren't wrong. You weren't imagining things. You were just early, and now. All those forces that made you second-guess yourself, they're trying to catch up. See, when God gives you a vision, it doesn't always come with instant proof or applause. It comes with a weight, a deep inner knowing. Something only you could hear. You didn't need validation back then because your soul had already tuned into the frequency. You carried that vision silently, building it brick by brick through challenges no one else saw. You were being refined in spaces where your name was never spoken. For a long time, nothing about your journey looked divine. It looked like rejection. It looked like being overlooked, underestimated, even misunderstood. Others were handed what you had already mastered. You watched doors swing open for people who had only rehearsed the life you had actually lived, but you didn't beg to be let in. You didn't perform for approval. You kept building, even when no one else could see it. You stayed faithful to what hadn't manifested yet. Now, here's the shift. The transformation that's been slowly unfolding is finally catching up to the person you've already become inside. The life you've been waiting for is meeting the soul that's been prepared for it all along. And people are noticing. The ones who once looked past you. They're pausing now. Not because they've suddenly become wise, but because your presence unsettles the narrative they told themselves when you were invisible. They didn't expect you to outlast the silence. They didn't think you'd still be standing, whole, rooted, and soft with a power that doesn't need to announce itself. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's felt. Deeply. It's in the stillness, the self-assurance. It's the peace of someone who knows they belong, and if you've been sensing that weird magnetism in the air lately, that unexplainable shift, it's real. It's not your imagination. That pull you feel. That's not ego. That's arrival. What most people don't understand is this: being hidden wasn't punishment. It was protection. You weren't left out. You were being built up. You were set in the background, not to be dismissed, but to be developed. The world loves the loud, the polished, the instant. But God does His best work in silence. In the unseen places. In caves, deserts, wildernesses, spaces where no one thinks anything sacred could survive. That's where you were formed, and that's why recognition didn't come when you thought it would. That's why your timeline didn't make sense. Because what's rising in you now couldn't be rushed. It couldn't be mistaken for hype or trend or raw talent. What you carry is deeper. It's legacy, not performance. You weren't made to impress. You were made to impact, and impact. That takes time. It can't be faked. It has to be lived, and that's exactly what you've done. You lived through the waiting. You showed up during the silence. You stayed steady even when you questioned everything. You planted seeds in dirt that gave no sign of life, and you kept watering them anyway, because here's the truth about seeds: they don't need witnesses to break through the soil. They just grow, and something in you is growing now. It's undeniable. You can feel it in your body. Life is finally starting to align with what you've been holding in your spirit all this time. The energy around you is shifting. People may not know what's different, but they feel it. It's not your voice. Something's changed. It's not your style. It's not your status, it's the way you carry yourself now, like someone who knows time is on their side. Someone who no longer begs to be seen. Someone who doesn't shrink into the roles that once made them small. You've outgrown them, not out of pride, but purpose, and here's the beautiful part: you didn't force it. You didn't manipulate it. You didn't hustle your way here. You just stayed loyal to what God whispered to your heart, even when no one else could hear it. Now the unveiling has begun, and that's the part people don't talk about enough: not just the waiting, but the wondering. The nights you laid awake asking if anything was happening at all. The days that felt blank, like nothing was moving. You weren't looking for spotlight, you just wanted your life to reflect the hope you carried, but it felt like nothing was looking back at you. You gave your best, over, and nothing seemed to bloom. You fought to keep the faith while carrying questions that haunted your quiet moments. You asked yourself, is this really going anywhere? Is any of this worth it? And still, you stayed, you kept showing up. You endured the invisible seasons like a lamp glowing behind frosted glass, steady, even when unseen, and now kept growing even when your circumstances didn't. Look at how you treated yourself with reverence, even when others didn't know how. That was never weakness. That was sacred construction. Quiet, intentional, powerful. What's happening now isn't just the start of a new chapter, it's a reveal. A pulling back of the curtain on everything that was built behind the scenes. This is what alignment feels like. Not perfection. Not certainty at every step. But that grounded, unshakable knowing that none of this was wasted, that ache you felt watching others get celebrated while you stayed invisible. That was real. But it wasn't the end of your story. Your life didn't overlook you. God didn't abandon you. It was the opposite. You were being crafted with care, refined for the exact moment you're stepping into now, because now you're ready. You see, what used to feel like delay was really design, that missed opportunity. It wasn't yours to carry, it would have clipped your wings. That door that didn't open. It would have led you somewhere small, when you were made for something wide and expansive, that person who couldn't see your value. They were never meant to define what only God could name. What's becoming clear now is this: the timeline wasn't broken. And now, those delays, it was hidden. They're starting to reveal themselves as direction. Those unanswered moments, the ones that felt like rejection, were really redirections. Every no you thought was a setback was actually a nudge. A sacred reroute, and those scars. They're glowing now. Not just as signs of survival, but as proof that you grew through what should have broken you, because you didn't just weather the storm, you became the architecture that can hold peace even in the center of chaos, and once you've lived through that, there's no going back to playing small. You can't unfeel what you felt. You can't unknow the vision that's been placed inside of you. You can't shrink yourself to fit into places you've outgrown just because it would make other people more comfortable. That's not humility, that's self-abandonment. And you've done enough of that, this moment you're in. It's not about proving anything. It's about emerging. Not loud. Not forceful. But real. You're not showing up with noise. You're not trying to impress anyone with gravity. You're simply becoming undeniable, because what's real doesn't need to scream to be seen. You're not chasing moments. You're anchoring movements. You're not asking to be picked. You're being revealed. That's why it hurt so deeply before, not because something was missing, but because your spirit had already evolved beyond what your current space could contain. That internal tug you felt. That wasn't lack. That was overflow, a soul overflowing with vision, purpose, and potential, with no place to land. But now, it's landing. The pieces are falling into place, but in reverse. You're beginning to understand why certain things didn't work out. Why certain people walked away. Why certain seasons felt dry and empty. It's all making sense backwards. That path that didn't open. It would have boxed you in, that person who couldn't meet you where you were. They weren't your assignment, that silence. It wasn't absence, it was cover. A holy pause that protected what was still in progress. None of it was random. You weren't forgotten. You were being tailored. Designed for timing. Crafted with intention. Sculpted for significance, and the world is starting to feel that. You're stepping into rooms where you don't need to introduce yourself. Because something in your energy speaks before you do. It's not just the words you say, it's the weight behind them. You're no longer performing. You're just present. Fully. Authentically, people are listening to you now, but not because you've changed your style. They're leaning in because your frequency finally reached their radar. You're no longer standing on anyone's porch, hoping to be invited in. You are the gravity in the room, and what's powerful about that is, you didn't get here by accident. You didn't luck into this season. This isn't viral. This isn't sudden. This is years of quiet, faithful growth rising to the surface, the authority you now carry. It wasn't given to you. It was forged, in secret, in silence, in the spaces where nobody clapped for you, where nobody posted about you, where nobody said your name, and still, you kept wasn't built overnight. It was layered on through every moment you didn't quit. Through every time you were passed over. Through every time you chose to stay kind when the world tried to harden you, you became solid. Like a mountain. Not because people saw you rise, but because you withstood, you held your ground through seasons of erosion. Through storms that tried to wear you down. You lost people, lost plans, even lost versions of yourself you thought you'd always need, and still you remained, and now, you're starting to draw in the very things that have been searching for you all along. Not because you chased them, but because you've become a match for them. You're not trying to fit in anymore. You're not editing yourself to be more palatable. You're not waiting for permission to walk in your purpose, you are the room. You are the assignment. You are the moment, and everything in your past that felt like pain. It's being redefined. That loneliness? That was preparation. That heartbreak? That was pruning. That delay? That was design. You didn't just survive those things, you outgrew them, and now you're blooming, not to prove anything, just because it's time. This isn't just your next chapter, this is your becoming. You can feel it. Not just in your circumstances, but in your posture. You're moving differently. You speak less, but say more. You don't explain yourself the way you used to. Why? Because you finally understand. You don't need to. There's a confidence in you now that isn't rooted in titles or status, it's rooted in truth. Lived truth. Hard-earned, soul-tested, fire-forged truth, and others can feel it too. They may not know what changed. They may not have the language for it. But they sense it, in the way you walk into a room, in the way you hold space, in the way you don't reach for things anymore because you know what's meant for you is already finding its way. You're not asking to be seen, you're simply not hiding anymore, and the beauty in all of this? You never needed a stage to become real. You didn't need an audience to become valuable. Your worth was never tied to being witnessed. That's what made you dangerous, and powerful, because you grew in the dark. And now that you're in the light, nothing can shake you. You're not scrambling because you know for affirmation. Who you are. You're not performing for applause. You're grounded in your assignment, and that changes everything. Now, you don't have to convince anyone of your value. Your life is doing the talking. Your energy speaks before your words do. Your alignment is louder than any pitch. People are starting to recognize something in you, but they're only catching up to what you've known all along, and here's the best part, you're not bitter, you're not carrying resentment from the seasons you were overlooked. You're not walking around with something to prove. You're walking with something to give. Something to build. Something to anchor. You're not chasing validation, you're creating impact. Because you finally understand, it was never about being chosen. You were already set apart, and that pain you carried? That wasn't because you lacked value. It was because your environment couldn't contain your calling. You weren't being dismissed, you were being redirected to where your fullness could actually thrive. The restlessness wasn't a flaw, it was a clue. The discomfort was the invitation. And now that you've answered it, you're standing on new ground. Ground you were born to occupy, so no, there's no going back. No shrinking. No hiding. No silencing your spirit to make others more comfortable. Not through hype, but through heaviness. Through presence. Through a stillness so sure, it can't be faked. This is your life responding to everything you held on to in faith. And it's not because the world suddenly got kinder, it's because you stayed the course. You honored the whisper when no one else could hear it. You stayed planted when it felt pointless. You stayed lit, even when the room was empty, and now, you're being revealed, not with noise, but with gravity, not to prove, but to be. You're not here for the fleeting. You're not here for the spotlight. You're here for the substance. You're here for the shift, and that's what's happening now. The season of wondering is closing. The days of doubting your own intuition, those are behind you, because you've become the evidence that what's real doesn't need to rush, that what's meant for you will find you, that the vision you held in silence was never a delusion, it was a preview, and now that the moment is here, you're not just ready, you were made for this. Thank you so much for walking this journey with me. If this message spoke to you, take a second to like the video. It helps more than you know. Share it with someone who might need this reminder. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Your journey isn't done, not even close. So keep going. And if you're ready for more, check out one of the videos showing on your screen right now. Click on the one that speaks to your spirit. I'll see you there.